look at this cast of candidates that we have before us, committed to reform, committed to a culture change. And I'm sure that they're going to get the job done. With that, we're open for your questions.
What makes you all think that the Democrats are going to vote out, going into an election, the most powerful Democrat in the state? Why would they do that?
Why wouldn't they do that? He's become an albatross around their necks. For sure, there's indications by polling that he's the least popular politician in the state of Illinois. With this latest incident of Mapes, his executive director of the Democrat Party, his right-hand man in Springfield, resigning over this issue, Mike Madigan's vulnerable, and the Democrats know that, and we call on our colleagues to do the right thing and ask Mike Madigan to step aside.
You're basically saying that your colleagues, however, lack political courage. You're calling them cowards, basically. So
No, actually, we're actually calling them to action. We're calling them to action. And certainly, they're in a predicament that many wouldn't want them to find themselves. But you find people that have bucked Mike Madigan in the past, and they've felt the effects of that. And so we're calling them to band together and do what's right. The political culture in Springfield has to change. It has to change from everything from how we pass legislation to how we handle personnel issues.
Jeannie, do you think that any of the Democratic lawmakers, the women who stood up in the Me Too movement months ago, do you think they had any idea they were pointing an arrow at Mike Madigan's head, that this trail would lead to Mike Madigan?
I don't think so. I think they were jumping on a national bandwagon that was starting to form and always wanting to champion women in every way. They felt like they had to do the same thing. At the same time, I don't think they ever felt like that would be directed straight towards Mike Madigan. However, they certainly knew the 300 women who signed that movement paper and then specified some of the allegations that occurred to them, some of the things that happened to them. They knew who they were pointing to. They never knew collectively that this would be a pressure point for Speaker Madigan. But they do know that now. And we ask them to please just come forward, do the right thing, help us change the culture in Springfield.
Have any of you out there ever witnessed Mike Madigan commit sexual harassment?
I have not.
Mike Madigan doesn't
Come to the
associate
microphone,
with
please. Come on.
Alan Skillcorn, 66 District. Mike Madigan doesn't really associate with a lot of us. So I've been in the House for 18 months now, and I've never had a conversation. So he certainly has not harassed me. But he doesn't associate a lot on the floor. Caucus meetings, he isn't always there. He is usually with Tim Mapes and Steve Brown.
How vulnerable do you think the Democrats who are running against your candidates up there will be if they don't respond to your call, as they almost certainly won't?
We plan to expose exactly what's going on to the voters and let the voters make a decision. We think that our Democrat colleagues are sensitive to this issue, and we intend to hold them accountable. That's what's happening here right now. We're holding people accountable. And I know it's a remarkable thing in the state of Illinois because it rarely happens. But that's what we're doing. The people in power have had an extraordinary amount of power for so long that it's time to wholesale change them out.
But if Mike Madigan is that big an albatross, isn't it better for him to stay in power and have him be that boogeyman that you can point at rather than have him gone?
Well, I'll answer that question. I
mean, for the candidates who are running as well.
Sure.
We're up here because we want to do the right thing regardless of party. That's why we have run for office. Those of us who have served in office, we want to do the right thing regardless of party. And then to answer the earlier question, remind me of the question again. I just didn't.
Well, I said, how vulnerable do you think the
right.
Democrats are
So,
if they don't do what you're calling on them to do?
I think among the general electorate, there's a lack of understanding about how one becomes Speaker of the House. I routinely field questions from people who say, why do the people of Illinois keep reelecting him Speaker? Well, Mike Madigan is a state representative, just like I am, just like Representative Ives, just like Representative Skillborn. He's a state representative every 2 years, elevated by his own members. And so that message has to get out to the people who are going to vote If you're voting for state representative, understand you have to ask that candidate, whether they're in office or not, who are you going to elect as speaker if you should get elected to this post?
Do you anticipate more women stepping forward, or this sort of drip, drip, drip of folks having the courage to finally speak up?
Well, first of all, I want to set the record straight here. This press conference was initiated by Amy Kessam to my left right here. She reached out to me on Thursday and said, Jeannie, I really think that we need to have a conference about changing the culture in Springfield and asking for the Democrats to come along and help us do that by changing out leadership. And I said, I'm happy to stand with you. Let's see who else wants to come along, which is how this was generated. It was not generated by me. It was not my idea. But I'm happy to stand here and do that. The second part of your question, do we think there's more? Well, unbelievably, there was a flurry of emails and a few phone calls this morning because we understand that there are more allegations to come back out from other women afflicted. So I guess that's your answer, but that's the most definitive answer that I have at this point on that. Amy, did you want to say something?
Sure. Just to answer your question, sir, the reason why myself and the other candidates that are currently running for state representative are here today is because of the culture that has been going on in Springfield for far too long. This has been decades now where Speaker Madigan has been in charge, and it's time to change that culture, and we intend to do that. And I do think that they are vulnerable. These other current legislators are vulnerable. We see that when we're out knocking on doors, when we speak to the voters, and we intend to give the voters an opportunity to make that change.
I didn't hear anyone mention the Governor Rauner up there. I mean, have you spoken with him? Is he on board with your initiative?
Again, no, we have not spoken with the House Majority Leader, or Minority Leader, or with Governor Rauner. Again, this is a press conference that it was initiated by Amy Kessam and the other candidates here.
Amy, where do you serve as a police officer?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Where do you serve as a police officer?
I'm currently assigned to the 8th District.
Oh, you're in Chicago?
Yes.
Okay.
I just wonder, I get what you're doing, but is it realistic?
I'm State Representative Margo McDermott in the 37th District. And I think that a lot of the questions that you're asking here assume that the Democrat Party and the Democrat ideas can only be represented in the state of Illinois by one man. I guess what we're challenging our colleagues across the aisle is you don't have to have this power-hungry guy with 20th century ideas about women's place be your leader anymore. Let your ideas speak for themselves. Find a leader that's in sync with the 21st century and with sharing power and not hoarding power. We're challenging them. We're not saying you can't have your ideas. Let's fight it out. Instead of using sheer coercion to maintain power in the state of Illinois, let's have an actual exchange of ideas on November 6th instead of just power politics as usual. That's what we're saying. Come on forward. Pick a new leader. Pick some leaders. Pick more than one. That would be great. Come on forward, folks, and let's have a real exchange of real ideas instead of the same old thing that's driven our state to the last spot.
Have you seen anything Madigan's done wrong in trying to police the sexual harassment story? Representative McDermott?
Well, what has he done right? He's picked only his own insiders, people with whom he has had long-standing personal relationships, to be his personal investigator. We're not looking for personal investigations by people that have been clouded up for decades. We're looking for actual third-party, disinterested people to carry forward these investigations. We haven't seen that in one single instance yet. And I think the fact that the Legislative Inspector General was kept empty for 3 years, notwithstanding many names proposed by Republican members of that committee, the fact that we have as the Auditor General a man that's under investigation by federal authorities, ring after ring after ring of power around Fortress Madigan is held by insiders. His own Attorney General in a state that is the third most corrupt state in the country, with the most corrupt city, never investigates a single matter of official misconduct. There isn't a single outside third-party investigator. All his investigations are designed to protect that power of Fortress Madigan. And we're calling for third-party investigations at all times.
We are also calling for the passage of HB 4840, which gives complainants rights. They get rights of notification, information, and participation when they file any sort of complaint to an inspector general, whether it's the Office of the Executive Inspector General, the Legislative Inspector General, or any other inspector general that's part of one of our agencies. Currently, right now, complainants have no rights. They have no rights. This bill was well thought out, it was presented, and it was wholesalely disregarded by both political parties. Both Republicans and Democrats refused to move it forward, wanting instead to see how the Sexual Harassment Task Force played out and what legislation they came up with. The passage of HB 138 and now the signature of Governor Rauner on that particular bill still does not give complainants rights. It still does not actually designate through and require that the legislative folks appoint a permanent legislative inspector general. We are still dealing with a special legislative inspector general through the end of this year. So there's a lot of problems currently that could be corrected immediately with the passage of 4840 and with the assignment of a permanent legislative inspector general and an independent legislative ethics commission.
See, it sounds like that, you know, you're trying to take the high road here, or at least this is the position you have on here, is calling out the Democrats to do this. But the reality of politics is Mike Madigan can help a lot of these people win. How much concern do you have that they might wait to step up to this plate, if you will, till after the election so that they can utilize Mike Madigan for their benefit and then take care of this problem later?
They're pretty good at doing that. They're pretty good at, you know, playing both sides of the aisle and assuming that voters are not going to figure it out and actually playing into this. But anybody who thinks that because that Mike Madigan's money doesn't also then mean that Mike Madigan will be elected Speaker of the House again is completely misguided. He's been playing this game for decades, and he's very good at it. And they know who they need to be loyal to in exchange for the cash.
We have time for one more question, then we need to let some of the folks up here go. Jeannie and some of the legislators will stay to answer any more questions. You guys have a question on the topic?
I'd like to add to the last question that you asked. I have zero confidence that the current legislators who would be calling for Mike Madigan's resignation, I have zero confidence that that would happen after this next election. Because remember, these terms are only two years. So it'll be the next election, and the next election, and the next election, and they'll continue to support this culture in Springfield where victims have no rights, they have no one to turn to, because they continually put people in place that are within their own political party, their own political circles, and these women feel helpless. They have no one to go to. So I have zero confidence that the current legislators will hold off until after this election to do the right thing.
So you're saying they're hypocrites if they keep Mike Madigan in?
Maybe. Maybe. Okay.
If you need to go,
Thank you.
file out this way, Jeannie and